The greatest survival story ever told did not begin with a storm, a wild animal, or a desperate cry for help. It began with one ordinary decision that millions of people make every year. Adam Foster, a 29-year-old office worker, set out for a peaceful afternoon hike through a remote mountain range, expecting to be home before dinner. Instead, he vanished into a wilderness that showed no mercy. As daylight faded and his phone lost its final signal, every familiar sound disappeared. Then, the mountain answered with a deep crack that echoed through the valley. In that moment, Adam realized a terrifying truth. If he did not find a way out before nightfall, the mountain would decide whether he lived to see another sunrise. Just 24 hours earlier, Adam's biggest concern had been another endless workweek. He spent most of his days behind a computer, answering emails, rushing between meetings, and promising himself that one day he would slow down. The mountains offered exactly what his busy life could not silence: fresh air and a chance to breathe without checking the time. He was not an experienced survivalist or an extreme adventurer. He was simply an ordinary man carrying a small backpack, a camera, one bottle of water, a few snacks, and a fully charged phone. Tucked in his jacket pocket was a second, smaller bottle, just in case. Before leaving, he texted his sister that he would be back before sunset. It sounded like a promise he could not possibly break. As he followed the well-marked trail beneath towering pine trees, surrounded by crisp autumn air and golden sunlight, nothing hinted that this peaceful escape was quietly becoming a fight for his life. Nearly 2 hours into the hike, Adam reached a weathered wooden sign at the edge of the main trail. An arrow pointed toward a narrow path with just 3 handwritten words: Hidden Lake, 2 miles. It was not marked on the official map, and no other hikers were heading that way. That should have been enough to make him turn around. Instead, the empty trail felt like an invitation. He imagined crystal-clear water reflecting the mountains, untouched by crowds, and the perfect photograph waiting at the end. After a quick glance at his watch, he convinced himself there was still plenty of daylight. It was only a short detour. Smiling, he stepped off the safe path and disappeared beneath the thick canopy of trees. Within minutes, the cheerful sounds of other hikers faded into silence. Ahead, the forest grew darker, narrower, and strangely still. It was the last decision he would make without fear. At first, Adam barely noticed the trail disappearing. Fallen leaves covered the ground, hiding footprints and blending the narrow path into the forest floor. Every turn looked like the last, and every towering pine seemed to stand in exactly the same place. He told himself the lake had to be just ahead. But after another hour of walking, there was still no water, no signs, and no people. Only endless trees stretching in every direction. A knot formed in his stomach as he reached for his phone. There was no signal. He switched to his map, expecting the familiar blue to guide him home, but the offline map had never downloaded. The screen displayed nothing but an empty grid. For the first time that day, he realized he had no idea where he was. He tried retracing his steps, but the forest had erased every clue. Several narrow paths split through the trees, each looking equally familiar. Every choice carried him farther from safety. Then the weather changed. Dark clouds swallowed the afternoon sun, and a cold wind swept through the valley. Within minutes, heavy rain crashed through the canopy. Mud replaced the trail, rocks turned slick, and thick fog rolled between the trees. Desperate for higher ground, Adam scrambled up a rocky slope, lifting his phone toward the sky. Nothing. As he turned to climb back down, his boot landed on wet moss instead of solid rock. The surface gave way instantly. The mountain let go. He slammed into the hillside, sliding through mud and loose stones. His backpack ripped from his shoulders as he tumbled toward the valley below. Then, with one violent impact against a jagged boulder, everything went black. When Adam opened his eyes, the forest had changed. The last traces of daylight were fading behind the mountains, turning the trees into dark silhouettes that seemed to close in around him. Rain dripped steadily through the branches, and the cold air bit through his soaked clothes. Every breath sent a sharp pain through his ribs. He tried to stand, but the moment he put weight on his right foot, a surge of pain shot through his ankle, forcing him back to the ground. His backpack was gone, and with it, his water bottle and one of his boots. His phone lay a few feet away, its screen shattered, its battery finally drained. All that remained was the small bottle from his jacket pocket, now half empty, a damp pocket knife, and the clothes he was wearing. Then another sound broke the silence. A long, distant howl drifted across the valley. Adam froze. He could not tell whether it came from a wolf, a coyote, or something carried by the wind, but in the darkness, the difference hardly mattered. Every instinct told him to keep moving, yet every painful step risked making his injury worse. With no shelter in sight, he gathered broken branches beneath the roots of a fallen pine tree, creating the smallest barrier between himself and the freezing night. It was not protection. It was hope. As darkness swallowed the mountain, one terrifying thought refused to leave his mind. His sister might already be worried, she might even have called for help by now, but no one knew where to look. Somewhere out there, in an entire mountain range, he was one man buried beneath the trees, and searchers would not even know where to begin. Morning arrived without warmth. A pale light filtered through the trees, revealing a forest soaked by the night's rain. Adam's clothes were still damp, his muscles stiff, and his ankle had swollen until even the slightest movement sent pain racing through his leg. Hunger gnawed at him, but thirst worried him more. The last of his water would not last another day. He remembered a simple rule he had once heard. Water comes before food. Ignoring the pain, he snapped a sturdy branch into a crude walking stick and began searching downhill. Gravity often leads to streams, and streams can lead to people. Hours passed before he heard it. A faint trickle. Pushing through thick undergrowth, he found a narrow creek weaving between moss-covered rocks. He dropped to his knees and drank carefully, resisting the urge to gulp it all at once. For the first time since getting lost, he felt a spark of hope. Then he noticed something else. Fresh footprints pressed into the soft mud along the water's edge. His heart raced. Someone had been here. He followed the tracks as quickly as his injured ankle allowed, calling out until his voice turned hoarse. Around the next bend, the prints disappeared beneath the rushing water. They were not human. They belonged to a large animal, something big enough to leave a print that deep, close enough that it had passed this way not long before him. Adam went still, listening. Nothing moved, but the forest suddenly felt smaller, and he was not sure anymore whether he was the one being followed. He kept walking, faster now, glancing over his shoulder more than once because the forest was not leading him toward rescue. It was reminding him that he was not alone. By the third day, Adam had stopped thinking about comfort. Every decision had been reduced to a single question. Would it keep him alive until tomorrow? His body was exhausted. His ankle barely supported his weight, and hunger had become a constant ache. Yet, giving up meant disappearing forever into a forest that would never remember his name. That afternoon, a distant sound drifted across the valley. An engine. Adam froze, hardly daring to breathe. He struggled onto a rocky ridge and shouted with everything he had left. He waved his torn jacket high above his head, hoping anyone would see it. The sound grew louder. Then it faded. Silence returned. For a moment, the last piece of hope inside him nearly disappeared with it. But instead of collapsing, Adam did something different. He gathered dry branches, stacked them beneath an open patch of sky, and waited. Hours later, the clouds finally broke. Using the small emergency lighter clipped inside his pocket knife, one he had forgotten he sparked a flame. Thin gray smoke rose above the trees. Minutes felt like hours. Then the unmistakable thump of helicopter blades echoed through the mountains. This time, the sound did not disappear. As the rescue crew lifted Adam to safety, he looked down at the endless wilderness below, and somewhere beneath that canopy, whatever had left those tracks was still down there, indifferent to the man it had let go. The mountain had never hated him. It had simply never cared. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson every survivor learns. Nature owes us nothing but hope, courage, and the will to keep moving can carry us farther than we ever imagined.